Hello, teaching veteran Trey Reely here, and welcome to Band Stuff. I just finished 4 days of judging sight reading here in Arkansas. I don't know how you do sight reading in your particular state. I'm sure there's some differences, but I'm also sure there are some similarities. And this is not going to be a comprehensive video on how to sight read. These are just some random comments that I'm making to help you take your band's sight reading in a competition or festival setting to a higher level. Because even the best sight reading bands that I heard, there were still little things that they could do to make it even better. And I hope that's what your goal is not just simply necessarily a first division rating and happy with that, but within that first division rating, are there some things that you could have done better? So what I'm presenting today, again, is not comprehensive. It's just some things to supplement things that you're already doing. First idea, key word for sight reading with your band at competition or festival, or as in Arkansas we call it an assessment, is efficiency. Make sure whatever plan that you have is the most efficient plan that can be had to get the most information covered in the amount of time that you're allotted. Number two, when you first presented with the music, look at the title. Many directors ignore the title, and the title often holds a clue to the style of the piece. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the piece, but at least look at it and see if it does. And a lot of times the pieces that are presented are like in a march style, or they're majestic, or they're legato, and the title of the piece can be a clue to what style you want to play, because sometimes the style marking is not at the beginning of the music, and the title is all you have to go with. Number three, address the style of the piece very, very early on. That's why it's important to look at the title and the style is from at the very beginning, the kids are thinking about what the style needs to be. Usually style is either not addressed at all or something is said about it later in the process. But think about the style very early and mention this to the kids very early in your sight reading process. Number four, address phrasing. Now, the thing about phrasing is if it's an important part of your everyday teaching, if you use a warm-up chorale or do a lot of sight reading, emphasize this idea of the four-measure phrase a lot. When you get to the sight reading room, it's a reminder. It's not something that's totally new to them. But many times, probably more often than not, I see phrasing not even addressed at all during the sight reading process. And it's kind of an advanced concept, but typically not too advanced that they can do it in a sight reading situation. And I've judged sight reading before where there were particular sections within their band, sometimes just one section that had a lot of problems, and basically the whole group was penalized because of that one poor section and the music pulling apart because of that section. Now sometimes it's kind of hard for me to know whether that was just a one-time freak occurrence or it was something that the band director could have anticipated. I really suspect most of the time that section has probably been a weak section all year long. I know I've certainly had sections like that. But yet I see that the director does not address that section at all during the prep period to try to anticipate some of the problems those sections that are going to have. You know, I've had years where sections, say my flutes, were very poor sight readers, so I would spend a lot of time with them during the 8-minute period I had, making sure they knew certain rhythms, and I would go over it maybe even 2 or 3 times, and sure, the judge might know and figure out that's a problem section, but if they play it right, that's no problem. So know where your weaknesses might be, look at the music with that in mind, and make sure during your prep period you address those things thoroughly. Number 6, have your percussion parts and who plays them determined beforehand. Now in Arkansas, you actually know what percussion parts are going to be needed before you go in. So be looking for that email or a week or two before the assessment and have the parts divided. If your state, and Arkansas didn't do this years ago, if your state doesn't let you know what percussion parts are going to be needed, then set up different scenarios, have the kids divided, and when they come in, they know exactly what you're going to do. And that also applies to part divisions within trumpets, clarinets, whatever sections are divided. Know who's going to play first, second, third, and so on before you even walk into the room. Number 8, most bands directors will have some type of overview of the piece before they start, and that's great. I think you should do that. But make the overview as quick as you can and get into the meat of the music study quickly. Number 9, make sure during your time period that you note any places in the music, particularly transition, where there's a tempo change, a key change, a rallentando, a fermata, anything that's different. Make sure you work those areas at least twice, maybe even 3 times, and make sure that they're looking up while you're going it over it. You look at them, have eye contact, have them look at you during this preparation process for those sections. Don't just talk them through it. Go through it with them using what I call airplay or ghost play or fake playing. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Number 10, use every last second of the time that you're given. Even if it's just 10 or 15 seconds, work all the way up to the end of your time. And you might not feel like you need it. You might feel like you've got a great sight reading group, and indeed you might not need it. But what can happen is if you have some problem in there, the judge could rightfully say, well, you know, they had an extra 30 seconds. They probably could have fixed that problem if you'd focused on it a little bit more. So use all of your time. And number 11, this is just for Arkansas folks as far as I know. As of today, that is April 2020, you can, as far as the rules go, the timpani can be tuned before the preparation period. So take that opportunity, find out what the pitches are. You can ask the judge the pitches. Sometimes they're written up on the board, but they can tune the timpani before the preparation time in Arkansas. And number 12, there might be some disagreement with me on this. I don't know. But I see quite a few groups come in and they use a lot of clapping during the sight reading process. That might be the only option you have according to maybe the rules of your state. But the 2 options I see when it comes to group work is either clapping or what's called airing. There are a couple directors that observe that we're not aware of the process of airing, so maybe you haven't been at this where you were taught. But airing is also called ghost playing, fake playing, is where the students have their instrument, they blow a gentle airstream without producing a tone into their instrument and do all the fingerings for that instrument or slide positions. I prefer that process a lot over clapping. Number 1, clapping can be very confusing. If a lot of the parts are very, very different and everybody's in there clapping, you know, it's hard to tell who's right and who's wrong, you know, among the kids sometimes. It's hard as a director to tell who's, you know, you're probably just following one line and you got all this other clapping going on. To me, it's just kind of, a lot of times it can be just a large cacophony of noise that's not very helpful. The reason I prefer airing, and another reason, the clapping, although they might be getting rhythm, that's a different physical process, clapping your hands, as opposed to airing where they're actually doing the exact finger motions they're going to have, or arm motions that they're going to have when they're playing. So what I expect my students to do is they should look exactly like they're playing. I tell them that if we have a video on you guys during this process, that it should look like you're performing, even though you can't hear anything. So have them sit up straight, great posture, great attention, great finger position, and play that particular passage with a gentle airstream going through there. Several advantages. You don't get the craziness of all the clapping going on. Sure, the rhythms are different, but they're not distracting. And even though they don't hear exact pitches, they get some idea of, you know, whether it's going down, whether it's going up. It helps with style, because let's say you're doing, you have a piece that's a march style at the beginning. They can actually hear each other, which you can in clapping. They can hear the band going like a march style. So it's a lot easier to address style when you're airing or ghost playing. It also helps a lot more when you're holding fermatas, whereas the clapping just stops and that's it. When you work rallentandos, you know, it's right there, very, very close to what they're doing when they're really, really playing. And so when we go back to this idea of efficiency, to me, airing is a lot more efficient than clapping. And you just want to get as much of that piece covered as you can. And I feel like that's a lot more efficient way to do it, because you can get more things covered than doing a lot of clapping. And finally, one key to get better at sight reading is just to do a lot of it. When I was a younger teacher, we didn't do a ton of sight reading per se, because it was so difficult just to hand out new music all the time. Half the time it was an old piece that was missing parts or whatever. And, you know, passing it out, taking it up, all that kind of thing was kind of a pain. And we do some with the music that we were going to perform. You know, when we first hand it out, we try to go through the process a little bit, but not near as much as I would like. Well, a few years ago, I found a wonderful book called the SightReading Book for Band. It's by Jerry West. It's published by Wingert Jones, and it is a wonderful resource. It has 100 songs in it, and they're amazingly melodic. They're actually enjoyable to play. I remember when I first got the book, I thought, well, this is good for sight reading, but the music's all going to be kind of, you know, cheesy and corny and not enjoyable. But really, most of the songs are really nice. And there's actually 2 books. Both of them have 100 exercises in each one of them. And it can really enable you to sight read. Before we sight read in April, technically, because we used that book, a lot of times we use it as a warm-up. We sight read 40, 50 times. And before we even went to the competition was no change at all. Now, early on in the process, I wouldn't go through every bit of the sight reading process like we would at the assessment. But as we got closer to the assessment, then I'd formalize things more into the way the assessment worked to build efficiency. Now, there is a book out there called the First Sight Reading Book for Band, and it has 50 exercises in it. But I would highly recommend the one that has 100. Get a little more bang for your buck there. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope there's at least one idea there that can help take your sight reading up to the next level the next time you have a sight reading competition or assessment. Best of luck to you.